Strategists in Canberra and Washington ponder where to next for Afghanistan. On the ground in the south of the country, the Australian Army is trying to carry out the current strategy. One vital question is how to deal with the fallout from unintended casualties. In August, 2 Afghan policemen were shot by Australian troops at a checkpoint. One of the men died, and now the father of the dead man says the Army made a serious mistake when they described how his son died. The father says his son was wearing his uniform at the time, which contradicts the Army's original findings. Ash Sweeting reports from Afghanistan.
In August, a coalition chopper brings in an Afghan man, injured by Australian soldiers. Australian and Dutch medical teams prepare to treat him. His name is Nimatullah. He has been shot 10 times by Australian troops. Earlier, Nimatullah and his friend Safratullah had ridden together on a motorbike towards an Australian Army checkpoint. The soldiers opened fire, but Nimatullah was luckier than his colleague. 16 bullets hit Safratullah and he died at the checkpoint.
A motorcycle carrying 2 individuals failed to stop at that checkpoint. That motorcycle was then engaged, killing 1 individual and wounding another.
The medics don't know it, but the man they're working on and his now dead friend are both members of the Afghan police force.
Yeah, that's correct, but that was not identified at all prior to the engagement. They were on a motorcycle, not a Afghan National Police vehicle, and it was only after the engagement that they were then identified by other police that they were part of the ANP.
So how did Australian troops come to open fire on their allies? Abdul Ghani is the father of the dead policeman. He is adamant. He says both his son and the man treated by the Army medics were wearing their police uniforms. But the Defence Department said that when the men approached the checkpoint, they were not wearing their uniforms, did not identify themselves as police, and failed to comply with the verbal and visual signals asking them to stop.
His son was shot 16 times by the Australians. He says yes. When the Australians shot at them, when they were coming, were they wearing their police uniforms? He says yes.
Abdul Ghani says that 15 minutes after the shooting, he rushed to the checkpoint. He too was wearing his Afghan police uniform, and he claims he was also shot at by the Australians. The Defence Department says their troops came under fire after the initial incident. No matter what happened, the incident is unlikely to end with the death of Safratullah. The ancient code of Pashtun-Wali, tribal law here, poses a major problem for the Australians and could raise up a new enemy. It obliges Abdul Ghani to now choose between staying with the police or joining the Taliban to avenge his son's death by taking up arms against the Australians. Australian forces paid Abdul Ghani $1,700, an amount he says cannot replace his son. Ramatullah is the brother of the surviving policeman from the attack, and he too is now considering changing his allegiances. Such incidents don't always have the same consequences. In this village near Tirankot, life is basic and harsh. At this time of year, they sort almonds, one of the few cash crops other than opium that people can make a living from. The villagers rely on the patronage of local strongman Muhammad Dawood. In September last year, Dawood's father, Rosie Khan, was killed by mistake when he and his foot soldiers clashed with the Australian Special Forces. Rosie Khan was a powerful man, a former district governor and friend of President Hamid Karzai. Mohammed Dawood says the accidental clash was set up by an enemy of his family.
یو کس دی هغه هم قدرتمن خلک و دا د قدرتمنو خلکو په خوله دغه ځای ته زموږ ساحې ته راغلي وه ورته وایو نو پیښه وسوه بس.
A defence inquiry found Rosie Khan and his men mistakenly found themselves in a firefight with Australian soldiers. Mohammed Dawood says both groups were misled, told by someone that the Taliban were in the area. He says the man who misled both groups is not from the Taliban, but is currently a member of the Afghan government.
د اسټراليانو سره وزه ډېرې ښه اړیکې لرم خو داسې خطا یې ورته راځي ما بینسته اسټرالیان بیا نه کوي نور د دې ملګري پکې اسټرالیانو رنګ بدي په اسټرالیانو دلته خپل شخصي دښمنۍ د سره کوي ورته واځه خپل په نظر دا نه غواړم چې اسټرالیا عسکر یو څوک خپل شخصي دښمني په وکړي.
I think it's pretty well known that powerful commanders will use the international military to try to gain advantage over their rivals, and this is not something that's a new phenomenon.
The local United Nations political analyst is wary about Australian troops using intelligence from local tribal elders to help target insurgents and supposed bomb makers.
Really the most important thing is what are you leaving behind? I mean, you can actually take out high-level commander, but if you're not actually able to affect change, real change, whether it's improved governance, development projects, etc., then you're essentially just creating a vacuum, and it's going to be filled by somebody else who has the same resentments as the person before them.
In Afghanistan, the beating rhythm of hammer on anvil goes on unbroken. Foreign armies might come and go, but the daily struggle goes on, as it has for centuries. Of the latest soldiers, blacksmith Muhammad Gul has little confidence. Many are wary of foreign soldiers. It's one reason both tactics and strategy are being reviewed in Washington and Canberra.
Over the last few years, the Afghan National Police and Afghan National Army, with the help of the international military, have managed to pretty much secure the central part of Tirankot. But that control runs out about 5 kilometres down the road behind me. And once you're out into that country, all the areas are in Taliban control.
For international forces, this has been the deadliest year since the 2001 invasion. In Uruzgan province, there have been 219 recorded security incidents in the first 8 months of the year. Last year, there were just 163 incidents for the whole of 2008.
Often the situation here is interpreted as tribes that are loyal to the government versus tribes that are more infiltrated by the Taliban. But really, when you dig a little deeper, you see that a lot of the violence that you see in Uruzgan is actually tribal-based and is a result of these long-standing feuds.
The Australian soldiers manning the checkpoint that day were like these troops, from the Mentoring and Reconstruction Task Force. They're here to train local forces and rebuild schools and clinics. Some, like this man, say the Australians are doing a good job. Also in the province are 300 troops from the elite Special Forces Task Group, some of Australia's best trained soldiers. And what they do gets noticed. While the media is told very little about their activities, Lateline has been told they target Taliban commanders and the men who make their bombs. The Australians go out, often at night, to capture or kill men they call key insurgent leaders. The local police chief is happy with their work.
کوچني او غټ قومندانان چې کوم گرفتار شوي یا د بین تللي دي د اسرائیلي قوتونو د خوا څخه په تیر کال یعنی و اتایم کال کې او په دا نوي کال کې شاید اضافه تر 10 نفرې چې ته غټه لاسته راوړنه د روزګان په
He says the Australians are running an extensive intelligence network across the province.
They need to be loosened. They'll be loosened once they get to the top.
The Taliban they capture are handed over to Dutch and American forces.
افغانستان د پولیسو د قماندان په صفت د روزګان دولت د قماندان په صفت بلاخص د نظامی په صفت زما نظریه دا ده چې استرالیان په ډېر ښه یا په انګلیسي وایي اکسنټ په ډېر اعلی درجه دوی خپل وظیفه سرته رسوي خصوصا د دوی سپیشل فورس قوتونه.
The general says one Taliban leader targeted and killed by the Australians was responsible for the brutal beheadings of 35 policemen. The Taliban had first cut off the arms and legs of the police and pulled out their eyes. Military planners in the West have to account for tribal rivalries that often go back centuries. On the ground, daily tribal politics involves alliances that are constantly shifting. These volatile alliances are often put under great strain by competition for development contracts and other lucrative businesses, like control of the roads. So when Australian soldiers capture or kill a military target, it can have consequences far beyond any tactical impact.
You have to make choices. Often those choices are you rely on information from a certain individual, you rely on advice from a number of different power players in the area in order to develop your strategy of your operations. And as a result, you are potentially going to be used by those individuals to further their own personal gains.
The international community and the Karzai government have promised much and delivered very little. Ordinary Afghans have seen foreign forces like Imperial Britain and the Soviets come and go. They're wondering again how long foreign forces will stay in their country. Ash Sweeting, Lateline.